So a man named Blackley Cat has built this insanely cool version of Devastator. Now, of course, this is the Devastator from the second Transformers movie, Revenge of the Fallen, not the classic lime and purple Devastator from the original G1 Transformers. But regardless, this is an insanely well-built version of the character. The size and the scale of this thing is just incredible. So let's dive into the awesome details and some of the build process behind this really cool creation and give you a bit of inspiration yourself. Let's go. At first glance, it's easy to see a lot of Technic pieces have been used all throughout this build. Now, the choice to use so many Technic parts alongside a few CCBS elements as well was a really good choice for a few different reasons. Technic and Bionicle used to basically be the same thing. As you can see on some of the early Toa Mata packaging, Bionicle used to literally be classified under Technic. So Bionicle and Construction are pretty deeply rooted within Technic pieces, so there's always a place for it on your Construction characters. But I think it's even more appropriate to be using so much Technic on a mock this size because you need it for the scale of something like this. Pretty much anything this big is only going to be able to stay together with the help of a really sturdy Technic base. Kind of any big creation you see always has something like that to some degree. Also, Technic has so many pieces that are designed with the intention of looking like parts for construction vehicles. So it was genius to take advantage of that and use it on something that is literally a bunch of construction vehicles merging into a larger robot. Obviously they combine in the movie, but maybe you haven't watched the movie or you're not familiar with it. So here's some images of some of the early toys of this character where you can see basically how that works. Unfortunately, this mock doesn't transform in the way that the toys or the one in the movie did. Would be cool if it did, but hey, it still looks cool as it stands currently. So yeah, by all means, look into your Technic sets and use those pieces in creative ways like this. They're super helpful, and this is a great example of just how helpful they can be. And if you're planning to build a Transformer yourself, it's going to be pretty easy to lean into that Robots in Disguise aesthetic with so many different Technic pieces that are inspired by vehicle parts. Technic pieces are the perfect choice. So some areas of this build that I wanted to touch on include the eye design. It's lovely to see a really delicate lattice of trans bright green dishes and Baraki eyes mimicking the original source material. You know, given the larger surface of this huge face design, it's lovely to see so many pieces spaced out to form a really unique eye design that you just couldn't pull off on a smaller scale build. I also love the simplicity of these wires or tubes. So this has been made with some CCBS bone pieces and then you just put tires around them and suddenly they look a lot more like pipes and pipes that you can pose as well. So it's a great design and a pretty effective and simple one that again only kind of works on a huge creation like this. It's also smart to see these dark bluish grey tread pieces being used on the neck. Now this matches the source material very well, but also the curvy nature of these pieces allow you to armor up the neck and cover up some of the unattractive interior structure areas without having to use thousands of pieces. It's a cheaper and easier way of making this interesting, but also still looking cool. It's also cool to see that this is a very colourful mock. It's so rare to see so many colours used on one creation and having it work really well. I think the reason it looks so good is because the colours are blocked out onto each specific limb or body part, and so you can clearly see which limb relates to the specific Constructicon that then becomes that body part when they combine together to form Devastator. If we take a specific look at one of those limbs, the crane arm here for example, it's basically just a big old rectangle with a few random construction related things shoved on, like these treads or the scoops or a crane on the side there. You just put those on and suddenly it works well enough to evoke the energy of having previously been a construction vehicle that has then turned itself into a limb that becomes part of the larger robot. So it's nice to know that you don't have to individually build each Constructicon or each construction vehicle. All you have to do is kind of make it roughly evoke the essence of it, and that's enough. It still looks cool. Now, let's take a look at some quick behind-the-scenes images and look at some work-in-progress photos that Blackley Cat has posted on their social media. Let's see what we can learn about the build as it was being built. We can see a rather large lattice of Technic frames and different types of Technic lift arms that create this rough structure underneath the build. And then it appears that everything is just kind of built off of this larger frame. Now this is smart. Build a big and strong core and make sure it's sturdy, then just apply armor around it and ensure that it's linked on firmly. Now the same ideas appear to be applied on the individual limbs as well, and it's also interesting to note that everything seems to be somewhat hollow and lightweight. But you know, the armor covers up the fact that it's hollow, so you don't really notice that. But it being so lightweight, that's good because this is so big and it demands a lot of pieces. Because of that, it's pretty easy for this to just start to get too heavy, and then you'll run into the issue of the limbs or the head not being able to support the weight of the build, and then it'll just be impossible to display because it won't be able to support its own weight, or it's just going to keep falling over. It's just going to be a hot mess. So on the subject of being able to support its own weight, we can see a lot of heavy-duty supports on this thing that help it stand up and help it stay together. We can see on the neck this huge lattice of different piston pieces, and these are some heavy-duty pistons as well, again from Technic sets. There's also a few other smaller pistons scattered all throughout this creation, and much like real pistons, these act as additional bases of support that make sure each section is linked together and is, well, supported. Pistons really are a must-have piece if you're looking to build something of this scale yourself. I mean, even some of the original Bionicle Titan sets, some of the larger ones needed pistons for this exact reason. We can also see on the legs here that they use these large ratchet joint pieces, and they have a pretty good amount of them on the back here as well. Now these are great because they're some of the most sturdy rotation joints that LEGO makes, and they lock together really well. I mean, they even click in place when you sort of tighten them up. This is another great piece to have access to if you're building a larger creation like this, and you need your joints to be really sturdy and you don't want them to collapse or fall apart. In some of these behind the scenes images, it appears that each limb and the head can be separated. Now, I'm not sure if this is for transportation purposes, or if it's just that when this was being worked on, they were separate, and as it was being built, they were attached later. Either way, I think that's a really great idea to make it modular. It means that you can very easily transport it in the future, but, as you're working on it, it allows you to not have to take up a huge area of space, like the bed that Blackley Cat is building this on. Where's he going to sleep? But instead, you can take each section off, go over to your desk or somewhere else, work on it individually, and then bring it back to the larger structure. It's just easier that way. So that's some of the interesting building techniques behind this build, but let's take a second to just marvel at the beauty of this creation. It really is awesome to see how effectively Blackley Cat has translated the very Greeble-heavy, mechanical, and detail-orientated robotic look of Michael Bay Transformers, and then put that into the real world using construction and Technic pieces. It really is cool how effective LEGO pieces are at recreating that really unique art style from the movies. This creation has such a dominating presence to the build. It's just so impressive. So well done, Blackley Cat. This really is an incredible build. Hopefully you enjoyed taking a bit of a deep dive into this build and got a little bit of inspiration yourself for some future builds. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you in the next episode. Happy building and bye for now.